Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. We're looking at a massive new Texas labeling law that might literally change the snacks sitting in your pantry right now. And honestly, it doesn't matter what state you live in. It's a pretty wild example of how one single state can basically flip the entire country's grocery aisles upside down. Let's get into it. So, here's the million-dollar question. Will your favorite snack get a warning label? Well, by January 1, 2027, a new rule kicks in, meaning packaged foods sold in Texas will need a highly visible warning label if they contain certain everyday ingredients. And just to be clear, we aren't talking about weird, obscure chemicals. We're talking about the stuff that's probably in the cookies and candies in your kitchen right this second. And check out what this label is actually going to look like. This is the exact word-for-word warning statement mandated by the Texas Health and Safety Code. It literally has to say, warning, this product contains an ingredient that is not recommended for human consumption by the appropriate authority in Australia, Canada, the European Union, or the United Kingdom. And the law strictly says this exact phrasing must be perfectly legible, highly conspicuous, and slapped right there on the packaging. Imagine walking down the aisle and seeing that warning staring at you from a box of your favorite cereal. Talk about a total buzzkill. Now, what's super fascinating here is how Texas actually decided what gets this label. They aren't setting up some massive new science lab to evaluate these additives themselves. Instead, they're looking outward. The state is essentially cross-referencing global standards, checking if an ingredient is prohibited, restricted, or even just not recommended by those four specific authorities: Australia, Canada, the EU, and the UK. In plain English, Texas is basically saying, hey, if it's not good enough for Europe or Canada, you guys deserve a heads up about it. Section 1, the Not Recommended List, featuring 44 targeted ingredients. Okay, so you will very likely recognize these common food dyes: red number 40, yellow 5 and 6, blue 1 and 2, and green 3. These are the exact synthetic colors that give our favorite everyday snacks those bright, fun, neon colors. I mean, from sports drinks to fruity candies to your boxed mac and cheese, these dyes are absolute staples of the American snack diet. But because they face strict restrictions or require warning labels overseas, they are squarely on the Texas target list. But it doesn't stop at just neon colors. The full official list of 44 items actually includes some incredibly familiar preservatives and processing additives too. You've got BHA and BHT, which keep the fats from going rancid in your chips; bleached flour and bromated flour, which are completely standard in commercial baking to make dough rise better and look whiter. Oh, and titanium dioxide, often used to give a bright, opaque white look to frostings. These are literally the pillars of modern food manufacturing. Section 2, the rules of the game. Let's look at the exemptions and the massive penalties. Now, it's really important to note that not everything gets a label. The law has some very specific carve-outs. Your restaurant meals, dietary supplements, alcoholic beverages, and USDA-regulated meat or poultry completely exempt. Also, anything where federal law explicitly overrides state labeling gets a free pass. So basically, if Washington, D.C. says no, Texas can't intervene. To put that in perspective, if you order a bright red cocktail at a restaurant in Dallas, there's no warning label. But if you buy a bottled, brightly colored fruit drink at the grocery store, yep, that one gets the label. So you might be wondering, what happens if a snack company just decides to ignore all this? Well, for packaged foods that aren't exempt, the stakes are incredibly high. The civil penalties for ignoring this mandate reach up to $50,000. That is a massive chunk of change for a labeling error, and it really proves that the Texas authorities are not messing around here. But here is the real kicker. That maximum $50,000 fine, it isn't just a one-and-done ticket. That applies to each violation for every single day the violation continues. Just think about that. If a company ships thousands of mislabeled boxes of cereal to grocery store shelves across Texas, and those boxes just sit there for a month, the math on those penalties goes absolutely astronomical in a hurry. We're talking an existential financial threat to a brand. Section 3, the national ripple. Let's talk about how this Texas law has a massive U.S. impact. If you live hundreds or even thousands of miles from the Texas border, like say you're watching this from New York, Ohio, or California, you might be wondering why on earth a Texas health and safety code matters to your weekend grocery run, right? Why should you care about what's happening in Austin? Well, the answer lies right here in the text of the law itself. The rule contains this incredibly powerful clause stating that it applies to packaged food sold in Texas, completely regardless of where it is actually manufactured. If you're baking cookies in a factory in Chicago, but you ship them to Houston to be sold, you are bound by this Texas law. You literally cannot escape it just by being out of state. And this puts food companies in an absolutely wild predicament. The Texas consumer market is simply huge, over 30 million people. It's way too big for any major food brand to just ignore. You can't just stop selling your potato chips in Texas. So, a food manufacturer anywhere in the US essentially has to choose between two paths. Path 1, design new packaging with a warning label. But printing one special box for Texas and a different box for the other 49 states is a total logistical nightmare. I mean, nobody wants to be the warehouse manager trying to figure out which pallet goes to Dallas and which goes to Denver. So they likely just put the warning on all their boxes nationwide. Or there's path 2, which is honestly what public health advocates are hoping for, and that's to change their nationwide recipe entirely to remove the ingredient and just avoid the label altogether. Now the clock is already ticking on this massive industry-wide decision. The rule is officially adopted today, but the drop-dead compliance date is January 1, 2027. That's the deadline when any newly developed, revised, or copyrighted labels must include this warning. That gives food scientists and manufacturing logistics teams just a couple of years to figure out if they want to reformulate their beloved recipes or completely redesign their packaging for the entire country. So as we count down to 2027, the big question for snack enthusiasts all across the United States is this: will your favorite brand tweak its recipe, or are they just going to slap a Texas-sized warning on your snacks? Next time you hit the grocery aisle, you might want to take a closer look at those labels, because this Texas ripple effect is already heading straight for your pantry. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.